Welcome to Software Rocks, the Productive Development Project Part 1. Welcome to Software Rocks, where I'm going to teach you how to take your software development from average to amazing. On today's show, the Productive Development Project Part 1, starting off on the right foot, and something you can do today to start making your development better. Before I go into this today, over the last couple of days I've spent a lot of time thinking about where do we go wrong as software developers? How can we make it better? How can we do a better job of the business of developing software? Because I know if you left it up to developers, they'd get rid of all the management, they'd get rid of so many bits and pieces. And while I think it's a wonderful utopian dream, I don't necessarily think it's the right thing to do. Mostly because most of the developers I know are brilliant at starting projects, utterly appalling at actually finishing projects. And if it wasn't for various people coming along and smacking us around the head, we just would never finish anything. But I think there is a middle ground. I think there is something in between where you can have the dream of less management, less overhead, less bureaucracy, while also keeping control. And I think I'm starting to see that the core thing that is missing from most software development places that I've ever worked or have ever talked to people about is the leadership. It is the core driving understanding of what software development is. And maybe it's just having the guts to actually get out there and do software development better. This is something I'm going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. I'm come up with the idea of the hero development, I want to call it, where we're not afraid of developing software. In fact, we embrace it, and we embrace the change that is software development. But the thing that it seems to lack to me, the thing that lacks the most is the pure leadership of developing software. There's obviously the technical understanding. That's imperative. I don't see how you can run a department, have a department, be involved with the software development department if you have no technical understanding. Now, that's not to say you can't have any technical understanding. Not everyone can be technical, of course. But if you're going to do software development, and perhaps if you're going to do any business at all, you've got to have serious leadership. I'm going to go into some of that here, and I think this is probably what's kicked me off on this, but this is something I'm going to think about over the next couple of weeks. If you've got your own ideas, I'd be fascinated to hear what you think. I definitely think leadership is possibly the key piece that is just missing from everywhere. Anyway, on with today's show. The Productive Development Project Part 1, start off on the right foot. So over the next few shows, I want to talk about actually starting a project. So we've talked about how you can get going and actually starting, but I actually want us to run through the steps of before you take it to the development team, giving it to the development team, and what you're going to get out the other side of that. So this isn't a prescriptive guide. I'm not going to cover everything, and things I talk about here are not going to work for everybody. This is about giving you an idea of what you can do, and potentially even giving you permission to come up with your own ideas and approach it in a different way. The main thing you're going to get, and again what I was talking about at the start, is an idea of how you should act and how you can act with purpose and give it direction. Again, it comes back to that leadership. There's nothing worse for me when I'm doing development or when I'm working with development teams or even just the whole development departments when they're floundering around and they're not clear of who's doing what, who's in what positions, what they're there to do. This makes no sense to me, and unfortunately I see it again and again and again. I work with a department and they'll go, yeah, we've got some architects, but what do? They don't come and talk to us. They don't talk to anybody. They seem to do their own thing. Well, why? Why is that? How come you've got people in your department? And let's be honest, they're not huge departments most of the time. And there's groups of people you don't know what they do. Development is incredibly tightly knit. Again, this is all coming back down to leadership and clarity and purpose. I'm going to come on to this because I think this is the key thing that is just missing from software development out there. So anyway, starting off on the right foot. Again, I think you're going to find leadership comes into this a lot. So running a development project doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complex. In fact, most of the time, it's actually surprisingly simple. But people find ways to make it incredibly complicated and incredibly complex, and they bring in project management and they bring in all this methodology. In actual fact, you know what? Most of the time, it's just not that hard. So what I do want to do here is lay out a bit more of a lightweight, more practical approach that's going to tie in with Agile and Scrum. And this is really about kicking off. This is really what you're going to do before you start developing your software. And hopefully, it's going to get you off the ground quick, and it's going to get you running very, very fast. The core of the idea is all about clear, concise communication, defining your goals, getting everyone's commitment, and there you go, there's again leadership aspect there. Get everyone's commitment who's going to be involved in this project and actually make sure they know what the hell is going on. Stage 1. Prepare the ground. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Abraham Lincoln. A very, very famous quote, and he is exactly right. If you're gonna spend any amount of time doing anything, make sure you know exactly where you're going and make sure you've got everything prepared before you start. Getting everything ready before the development teams get involved is absolutely critical to you succeeding. This goes back to psychology in many aspects. If you believe you're going to win before you start, then you've got a much better chance of actually winning. Getting everything ready before the development team gets involved is absolutely critical to the success of your project. When you start, you want to start with a bang, because you want to create momentum and enthusiasm for your project. You want to create confidence that you know what you're doing, and the team believes you know what you're doing. If you start your project out with a whimper, if it starts out, well, I think we're going to do some project work, but I'm not totally sure. I haven't really got sign off. I don't really know what I want. What are you telling your development teams? What are you communicating there? I can tell you what you're communicating. You're communicating, I haven't really thought about it. I don't know what's going to happen. I can't explain it very well. The business doesn't know what they want. I don't really have a vision. There's no real ownership. I've got a ton of questions I haven't even thought about yet, let alone the questions you're going to ask me. That's not how I want you to start your development projects. Don't let that happen. Don't let that be you. And there's absolutely no reason for that to be you. I'm going to talk about the documents you're going to need in more depth, and we've talked about them in the last show. There's 4 core documents that I think are out there. Again, nothing too technical, nothing amazing. It is all about leading the team and giving them confidence that you know what you're doing and you've thought this thing through. But if you're the business owner, if you're the product owner, I'm going to get onto product in a second, you're responsible for this stuff. It's not the development teams who are responsible for telling you what to do. If you are the business person, if you are owning this project, you tell them what you want. They're going to come up with their own ideas. They're going to come up with their own bits and pieces. And of course, they're going to challenge you on certain things because they want to make sure your thinking is sound. And that's what you want. You want them to do that. But you own this. This is yours. You should have the vision. You should have the clarity. And you're going to lead this thing. Even if you're not the most technical, it doesn't matter. Leadership isn't about being the most technical. So going back to the development side of things, if the business can't meet these requirements, don't let them start a project. You are looking for seriousness and commitment from them that they know what they're doing, they've thought about this thing, and they're actually going to follow through on what they're doing. So many times I've worked with businesses where they go, yeah, we'd like to start a project, but we're not really sure, but we're going to start, we're going to kick them off, and we'll sort of get there in the end. And then they wonder why teams take so long to get developments done. All this really simple stuff that just doesn't have to be as complicated as people make it. So that doesn't mean you as a development team don't offer your support. The business needs your help. The business needs the support of the development team in defining a project and understanding what they can and can't do. So if they don't have the skills in creating the documentation that you need, you're faced with 2 questions. Question number 1 is, how much help should you give? Can you give business analysts? Can you give developers? Can you help them flesh out their ideas? Can you help them form them into coherent arguments? Do they need training? Do they need help? Do they need more support in that side of things? But the second question you have to ask is, do they really have the skills to own a product? Do they really have the skills to lead a software development project? And that's not an easy question. If you were building a skyscraper and a business has decided to pay for it, as businesses do, they've got the money together, they've got their team, does the project manager, does the head of the people making this thing come down to the site on the Monday morning, gather the builders together and say, right, good day guys, we're going to build a skyscraper? And obviously the guys, well, have you got any plans for this? Oh no plans for this. We're just going to build it. This can't be that hard. That makes no sense. You wouldn't build a building like that. You wouldn't build a car like that. You wouldn't build anything like that. And yet, that is how most businesses build software. Let's not do that anymore. Let's stop that. So who are you going to need for this? Number one, the product owner. This is a must. This is non-negotiable. Nothing happens without the product owner. This is the person the company will hold responsible for the project. They are in charge of the vision. They are the key role. This is the one person you can never, ever get away without having. And I think, as I said previously on the last episode, and I'm going to say it again, I think this is the hardest job in developing software. It's probably one of the most frustrating jobs in developing software, but I think it's probably the hardest. They've got to be a leader. They've got to be the social person. They keep the team together. They've got to be an evangelist for the ideas they've had and where the company wants to go. They've got to be a realist. They've got to balance the vision with what they can actually do. They need to know how to get the best from people, how to talk to people, how to work with people. And let's be honest, developers are not the easiest people to work with, let alone testers, but let's not talk about testers. That was a joke for you testers out there. They've got to be able to clearly communicate. They need to understand technical problems. They need to be prepared to work with the development teams to actually solve problems. They need to defend the team, and ultimately, they're the ones that need to take the bullet if this project doesn't either A, get in on time, or B, doesn't deliver the value the business wanted. They are not a separate part of the team. They are the team. They are the core of the team. They are the leader. They are the people who should be standing at the front and telling people where to go. And they mustn't shy away from that leadership responsibility. They have to accept the blame, but they should also be there to accept the praise. They are the ones that guide everybody. They should be leading from the front. There's no either other way to say this. They are at the front and they are leading everyone. And this is where the confidence of the rest of the team comes from. If you have a great product owner who is very clear in what they want and understands what they can and can't do, the team will follow and they will have much greater confidence in what they're actually building. Documents. The product owner is responsible for getting everything prepared for the start of the project. There's a lot of work in actually doing that and making sure their vision is clearly thought out. But this is an agile process. So what does that mean? That means not every single detail has to be fleshed out. You don't have to have the design, and you shouldn't actually have the design going down to the nth degree. But that doesn't mean you don't have any design. That doesn't mean your vision is not clear. That doesn't mean you haven't already worked out a lot of the bits and pieces. And don't forget, I'm talking about what you do before it comes to the development team. So these are not the final designs. These are just going to be the first attempt. Now, obviously, I'd expect a product owner to have a fair go at actually making these documents. They don't have to be perfect, but they definitely have to show that they've been properly worked out. And you'll notice I say the product owner is doing it, not a BA working for the product owner. And I'm not saying you can't have a BA helping you, but the product owner should be as invested in actually doing this as any other member of the team. This is actually their product. They should be more invested than anybody else. Again, how often do you see that? How many times have you seen your product owner not only writing stories, but actually planning stuff out and being so engaged that they're looking into the future? That's what they're employed to do. That's their job. And yet so many places leave that to the development team. So they should be there at the front. They're communicating their intent. They're communicating their vision. They don't have the final design, but they have a very clear set of end goals in mind. So the first document they're going to work on is the roadmap. We've talked about this before. I'm going to go over it again here. I'm probably going to go into more details in the next show. I'm not quite sure I'm going to go next. We're going to talk about the team, so documents will probably come into that. But it all starts with the roadmap. Obviously, let's imagine the product owner has an idea for a product. They obviously don't know how it's going to be developed or what's going to happen, but they must have a very clear idea of where it's going to go. They must have a very clear idea of the end product is going to look like this. So they need to start making up their roadmap. This is how I'm going to get from here to the end. And that's going to help them work out what their MVP is, how long before they should do certain things, what features it will have, what the next steps are going to be, what does it support. I've done a whole talk on roadmaps. I'm going to map it, but I'm going to link it into this one. Roadmaps are key for me. I don't think you can get away from them. Next step, prototypes. You've got a clear roadmap. Fantastic. Draw this thing out. It doesn't have to be complex. Again, we talked about prototypes last time. I've talked about them before, and they are so sorely missed from development projects. It's just not even funny. So you know what it's going to do. You know the goals. You know where it's going. Excellent. Get on with your prototype. Draw the pages out. It can even just be pencil and paper. It doesn't have to be amazing, but show that you've actually thought about it. Next step, specification. This one's optional for me. It can be an incredibly useful document, and I think these documents become increasingly useful as you go on, especially if they're a living document that the development team start to fill out saying, yeah, this is this page, this is this page, these are the components. I know a lot of people are fans of wikis. I'm a big fan of a wiki. They can work. There's some really good ones out there. But I'm also a fan of a really nice document, a really nice thick Word document that when someone says, well, what's in this project? What's it here? You go, here you go, print that out. There's a 200-page document that isn't dry, terse text, hundreds and hundreds of pages of text explaining the most minute detail. No, there's a page which shows a component and talks about the main features of that component. Doesn't go into massive detail, but it's enough that you could hand it to someone. They go, I know what all these pieces are. When the maintenance team comes to it, I know what this stuff is. I can work with this. I think something that just seems to lack. So many people say, oh, I don't need to do documentation. Agile's not about documentation. It's about the code is what you need. All the documentation's in the code. No, it's not. The code is in the code. But the intent and the original thinking, that may never go into the code. Make sure you keep it somewhere so you can explain to people later. You have the roadmap. You have the prototype. You have the specification. Again, these are all in their first form. They're only rough, but at least they show that you've actually thought about this thing. Now you can build the backlog. You read the documentation. You check up on the agile bits and pieces. It is the product owner's responsibility to create and look after the backlog, not the developer's responsibility. This should be done before the development team gets anywhere near this. So if they have the roadmap, that means they can create their epics, and now they have their prototypes, so they can turn those epics into user stories. The development team are there to help, and I'm sure they will help. The BAs should be there to help as well. But you should now have everything you need to turn this into a backlog. You are set. Let's go. Kick it off with a bang. This is something I see companies get completely wrong time after time, even really good companies. They just, for some reason, this slips through the cracks. I don't know why. They don't properly tell the teams they are starting on a project. I'm going to talk about planning and how you predict roughly what's coming up, but at least planning your projects out in advance in a later episode. It's something I'm dealing with at the minute. It's something that just keeps coming up and again and again. I think people get it so badly wrong. If you're not planning your products, you're not planning your project. If a developer can't come to the boss and say, what does the work look like for the next 6 months? If they can't do that, if the boss goes, I don't know, I haven't really thought about it. What message are you sending? How can you be leading anything if you can't answer that question? And I'm only asking about the next 3 to 6 months. I'm not asking 5 years down the road. I just want to know, am I going to be employed next week? And yet, they can't tell people that. Makes no sense to me. And you're not going to inspire confidence. You're not going to inspire anything if you can't answer those questions. So I'm going to deal with planning. Again, you can see how it's so tightly linked to leadership. It's not even funny. I'm going to talk about that very soon. I want to get these ones out of the way first. So yeah, you're ready to go. You've got your 4 documents: roadmap, prototype, specification, backlog. Let's kick this thing off. Let's really go for it. And when I say go for it, you get all the teams who are involved in this together into one big room and Hey, lay on some food, lay on some drink, whatever it is you're going to do. Make sure they remember this day. Lay your vision out. Get up there and introduce yourself and say, hi, I'm going to talk you through my project today. This is my vision. This is the roadmap. This is what this thing's going to do at the end. Really show them how much you care for the product, how much you've thought about it, and how much investment you've actually got in this thing. You want them to be coming out of there going, wow, I don't know how we're going to do that, but that guy really knows what he's talking about. Here's the other part of what I find strange. When those people leave that room, you want them all to know they are now on that project. There's no, well, you might be sort of on it in a couple of weeks' time and I haven't really thought about it. No, you're on the project or you're not on the project. You start today or you don't start. That's it. There is no middle ground. Just don't have this dilly-dallying around, we might be starting, we might not be starting. No, stop it. Do or do not do. There is no try. That's to quote Yoda for you nerds out there. I thank you. Tip the hat. Again, this is all about confidence. It's all about leadership. Leave people in no doubt about what they're supposed to be working on. I want those meetings from now on. I want them to be completely memorable and to leave people with no questions. They're going to have a ton of questions, technical questions, but they are in no doubt about who's running it, who's controlling it, and what they're doing next. Do your projects have these presentations when they get started? Why don't they have these presentations? Why are you not being clear about who's working on what and when? Developing software is not cheap. Having developers' time is not cheap. Having testers' time, not cheap. Having all this stuff come together, all the hard you've got to run it on, this is not cheap stuff. I know, and yet you get this strange opinion in companies. Full-time software developers, their time is basically free. No, their time is probably the most expensive time of anyone you've got in your company after your legal teams. And that's talking about the highly paid, really, really technical legal people. Otherwise, your software developers are probably the most well-paid people in the building. And if they're not, they bloody well should be. Don't mess about with their time. Value their time. And treat them seriously. Because you can't afford not to have them fully committed and working hard on your project. So the key piece of that, I hope you can see, you've got to inspire confidence. You've got to show the leadership. I know I've been on about that a few times now. I am going to talk about it again and again. You're going to have to put up with it, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. I know it sounds like woo, but inspiring confidence is the one thing that I see time after time really, really, really hurt software development teams. Don't leave them in any doubt about your commitment to this and everyone else's commitment. Show that you've thought about it. Show that you know what you're doing. That allows them to trust you. Ambiguity, doubt, lack of vision, showing you don't really care or you haven't really thought about a project, nothing kills team morale or productivity faster. Don't be that person. Something you can do today to start making your development better. Evaluate your product owners. Are they really owning your products? Or are they there just to tick the box to say, yeah, we're doing Agile and yeah, here are the product owners? Do they do the job or do they just moan when it doesn't go exactly as they want? Here's some quick tips to spotting a bad product owner. They are not technical in any way. They are not actively looking after the backlog. They don't attend the stand-ups, or they send someone else to attend the stand-ups for them. They don't come to demos. They look to blame people when everything is not perfect immediately. They're surprised at the end product. They don't look for solutions. These are all the traits of a very bad product owner. A product owner is part of the team. They should act as part of the team, not as the commander or the manager of the team. That's not their job. You need realistic product owners who know what software development is really about. They know how complex it is. They know how hard it is. They should be proactive in looking for solutions and working out what they really don't need immediately so you can actually get this thing going quicker. So what are your product owners like? Do they take the lead? Are they showing initiative? Do you expect them to lead? And if you don't, why not? How do you train them? How do you mentor them? Do they have a career path? Do they have a process that they have to follow? Are they actually being trained in owning a product? Software is incredibly complex. And I know software developers, they've spent their lives doing this stuff and they understand the complexities, but ultimately they shouldn't be owning and running this stuff. The business needs to own it. The business wants it made for a purpose, so the business needs to control where it's going. Thanks for listening to Software Rocks. I've said a hell of a lot of stuff there. There's still some ideas that I'm unpacking myself. Leadership, commitment, confidence, so many core important things to actually running a development team. I am going to get to them, it's just going to take me a little while. If you want more information or show notes on this episode, go to softwarerocks.tv/9. Don't forget, if you like the show, please give me a review on whatever platform it is you're listening to. I do enjoy reading the reviews. I do look at your comments and I do take them seriously. Apart from the really rude comments, but never mind. Yeah, leaving comments not only helps me, but it helps other people like you find the good shows out there. So do leave a comment. If you want to get in touch or ask a question, or you just got something to say, email me, andrew@softwarerocks.tv. You can join the Facebook group, or you can sign up for the newsletter. Go to softwarerocks.tv/sign up. I've got all manner of bits and pieces coming out there. Not only you get notifications about the episodes coming out, but I'm sending out the bits and pieces that I've built there as well, so you can get free sheets and other bits and pieces. Or finally, you can follow me on Twitter @AndrewBinstead. Thanks for listening. I hope your development just got a little bit better. Give me the product owner is responsible. So there you go. There's a nice big so. But I might actually keep that one in. That one worked. Do or do not do. Do or no do.